This woman would criticize me for any reason, but her fixation on my mailbox was particularly noteworthy. Initially, it was an inadvertent occurrence. Subsequently, it became habitual. Each week, she encountered and toppled my box. However, I grew weary of it. If she intended to obliterate my correspondence, she would now confront something impervious. Her reaction upon seeing the new model was impeccable, my friend. Had someone informed me a year prior that I would engage in a significant dispute over a mere mailbox, I would have scoffed and deemed them irrational. Here I recount the tale of how my neighbor transformed an innocuous toy into a battleground. If you believe I am overstating, it is due to your unfamiliarity with individuals who can lose sleep over correspondence that does not belong to them. The inception occurred with minor details. My mailbox was situated at the boundary of my property, akin to others in the neighborhood. For reasons only comprehensible to God and her ego, Karen deemed my box a personal affront to the neighborhood's aesthetics. The initial occurrence was subtle. One day, I ventured outside to retrieve my mail and observed that the mailbox was slightly askew. Not a significant issue. It may have been the wind, a child at play, or something else entirely. However, it recurred repeatedly. Just when I believed I was being overly cautious, the reality presented itself to me. One day, I resolved to install a security camera at the front of my residence, not due to the mailbox itself, but rather because the area had been encountering several thefts, which I deemed significant. On the initial day of recording, I examined the photographs, and there it was. In the dead of night, with a flashlight in hand, I am kicking my mailbox. Indeed, kicking. A middle-aged woman, attired in a floral robe, is violently assaulting my mailbox as though she were advocating for the liberation of an oppressed nation. Momentarily, I was astounded. However, I began to giggle, as it seemed implausible. Any reasonable individual would contact law enforcement, or at the very least confront them. However, regarding myself, no. I intended to observe the extent of this insanity. I reinstalled the mailbox the following day, without any communication. I remained in anticipation. She reappeared the following night. This time, she refrained from kicking. She merely exerted pressure with her hands and departed as though nothing occurred. However, I was fully aware that this would become into a routine. At that moment, I resolved to terminate this absurdity definitively. If Karen sought conflict with my mailbox, I would ensure my victory. I would triumph with elegance. One lesson I have gleaned from my life experiences is that certain individuals fail to recognize when they're engaged in a conflict they have already forfeited. Karen epitomized that type of individual. Upon reviewing footage of her kicking, shoving, and on one very amusing instance, attempting to forcibly open my mailbox with her bare hands, I recognized that this woman would not cease her actions. Since she desired to engage in play, I intended to partake in enjoyment as well. I conducted study for several days in pursuit of the optimal solution. I contemplated concrete. I contemplated strengthened steel. I contemplated the installation of a shock system. However, I recalled my preference for autonomy and my desire to avoid litigation. I subsequently discovered the ideal solution. Titanium. Does it seem excessive? Indeed, I had surpassed the threshold of concern. I contacted several locksmiths and identified one capable of performing the task. I purchased a pure titanium post and a mailbox that is resistant to collision, corrosion, and, naturally, unruly neighbors. If she desires to kick something, permit her to kick that. The following morning, Karen drove by my residence while I oversaw the installation. She halted in the center of the sidewalk and gazed at me. Her expression was a blend of astonishment and profound fury. I could nearly perceive the voice in her mind questioning, "What is that fool doing now?" I feigned ignorance of her presence and persisted with my tasks. The locksmith secured the structure to the ground using reinforced concrete, guaranteeing that the mailbox would remain intact, even in the event of an explosion. Upon completion of the task, I remained there, admiring my creation. It was exquisite, radiant, and impervious. But the most significant aspect was that it was now her opportunity to take action and I was anticipating. The following evening, I brewed my coffee, settled onto the sofa, and launched the security camera application. I anticipated her inability to resist, and my prediction was accurate. At approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, Karen arrived. Adorned in an ornate robe and wielding a flashlight, the individual resembled a somebody poised to do a crime. She approached the mailbox as though she were confronting a monster. She surveyed her surroundings, ensuring that no one was observing her. Subsequently, the impact occurred. I observed it in slow motion. She exerted maximum force to elevate her foot and delivered a kick. Subsequently, what transpired was sheer poetry. The force was so intense that she was nearly propelled backward. Karen lost her equilibrium, staggered, and fell, sitting in the center of the sidewalk, grasping her foot with both hands. The lantern tumbled away. She reclined, contorted in agony, shouting profanities that would have embarrassed even a sailor. I observed, sipping my coffee, smiling as if I had just witnessed the finest episode of a series. She rose with difficulty, favoring a limp. She gazed at the mailbox, as if anticipating that she had finally succeeded in obliterating it, yet remained pristine, steadfast, and unscathed. Karen had been defeated, and for the first time, she recognized it. I was mistaken to believe that the mailbox conflict would conclude at that point. Karen was very obstinate to concede a straightforward defeat. She could have exited that situation, subdued her pride, and proceeded with her life. However, this woman was incapable of accepting defeat. Like any formidable antagonist faced with a significant setback, she resolved to intensify her efforts. The issue was that she was now limping. The following morning, I ventured outside to retrieve the newspaper and immediately beheld the most magnificent scene imaginable. Karen is seated on the balcony bench with a bag of ice applied to her foot. Indeed, the woman who had attempted to vandalize my mailbox under the cover of darkness was now seated, her expression inscrutable, recuperating from her own folly. Had it been anyone else, I might have been concerned. After months of this woman tormenting me, I could only experience a joy that is difficult to articulate. She feigned ignorance of my presence. However, one could sense the animosity emanating from her. The entire neighborhood was aware of her actions. However, the most significant events were still forthcoming. In the late afternoon, while I was cleaning my truck, I observed an unfamiliar car arrive in front of her residence. A glossy black vehicle featuring a registration plate that I instantly identified. Attorneys. The situation was becoming intriguing. I anticipated her attempt at a desperate maneuver. However, I was unaware it would be so lamentable. The following day, an official notification was delivered to my mailbox. She initiated legal proceedings against me. Indeed, she alleged that I deliberately erected a hazardous building to inflict injury on third persons. I was shocked at the content I was perusing. The woman had spent months vandalizing my property, deliberately toppled a titanium pole, and now sought to hold me accountable for her actions. I laughed so intensely that I had to take a seat, but that is acceptable. If she chose to engage in that game, then I would participate. The day of the hearing commenced. We visited the local courthouse, where Karen arrived with her foot wrapped, hobbling conspicuously, as though she had suffered a grievous injury. She entered accompanied by an ostentatious lawyer, the type who employs bravado to appear intelligent. Am I the subject? I attended solo since, frankly, I required no assistance to overcome this farce. The session commenced, and the court requested her attorney to submit her case. The oration was deserving of an Oscar. My client sustained significant injuries as a result of a deliberate act by the defendant. You erected a robust structure, aware of its potential to cause harm, yet failed to provide any warnings regarding the associated risks. I was a malevolent antagonist who installed lethal letterboxes. The judge gazed at me. Sir, what is your response to these allegations? I folded my arms and smiled. Your Honor, my neighbor previously vandalized 3 of my mailboxes. I wanted to ensure that this one did not get toppled as well. The magistrate scowled. Do you possess evidence of that? Indeed, I did. I removed the USB stick from my pocket, presented it to the officer, and awaited the playback of the film. The entire room seen Karen strike my mailbox with the force of a soccer ball. The judge halted the footage at the precise moment of collision. Her leg was visibly bent backward, and her expression conveyed sheer agony as she comprehended the gravity of her error. The hush in the courtroom was exquisite. Her attorney faltered in her own reasoning. The judge exhaled and removed his glasses. "Madam, did you strike the structure of your own volition?" She faltered in her speech. Excluding myself, I was unaware of the difficulty involved. The judge rubbed his palms across his face, his patience exhausted. Case dismissed. On to the next case. Thus, Karen experienced her second defeat. However, my buddy, it was not yet concluded. If Karen has any dignity, she would have acquiesced to the judge's ruling and proceeded with her life. However, as I had previously discovered, this woman was unfamiliar with the concept of defeat. She exited the courtroom incensed, hobbling, exhaling sharply, and shouting profanities unfit for public discourse. Her foot remained bandaged. However, it was her ego that was truly wounded. If I believed she would concede following a public humiliation before the judge, I was gravely incorrect, because Karen was determined to eliminate me in some manner. The issue this time is that she has significantly compromised her own position. Several days subsequent to the hearing, the rumors commenced. The neighbors informed me that she was attempting to collect signatures to compel me to remove my mailbox. Following her defeat in court, her revised plan was to incite the entire neighborhood against me. As usual, the justification was utterly absurd. This mailbox presents an immediate danger to the youngsters in the vicinity. Indeed, it seems that my mailbox has been deemed a threat to public safety. The specific detail was the absence of children in the neighborhood. The condominium predominantly comprised elderly individuals and childless couples. Our nearest semblance of a child was an aged Labrador named Max, who slumbered throughout the day. In other words, her rationale was illogical. However, Karen was indifferent to reasoning. She intended to strike me regardless. This time, it was counterproductive. After years of tormenting her neighbors with unreasonable regulations, spurious penalties, and an excessive fixation on community aesthetic standards, she found herself devoid of allies. Upon initiating the circulation of the petition, individuals responded promptly. The initial lady she approached abruptly closed the door in her face. The second neighbor chuckled and remarked, "Karen, for heaven's sake, be quiet," was the most advantageous aspect. An individual exhibiting commendable petulance took her petition, canvassed door to door, and transformed it into its complete antithesis. Indeed, rather than a request for the removal of my mailbox, it transformed into an official document petitioning for Karen's removal from the area. It was a resounding success. Within 3 days, the petition garnered far more signatures than required. The neighborhood had a new objective: eliminating Karen. The condominium included explicit regulations. If a person became a persistent issue and the board voted against them, they could be expelled from the area. After years of mistreatment, the neighbors ultimately united to terminate her reign of terror. At the conclusion of the week, I received an email from the community council. An urgent meeting was convened. To my astonishment, the topic was Karen. The community hall was filled to capacity on the day of the gathering. All desired the tyrant's downfall. Karen entered with her customary composure, attempting to appear unconcerned. However, her eyes revealed an awareness of her disorientation. The board leader stood, cleared his throat, and declared, "The HOA has received several formal complaints regarding MS. Karen's behavior. Consequently, we are conducting a vote over her removal from the neighborhood." Karen turned pale. She attempted to dispute, assign responsibility to me, and assert that it was all a plot. However, no one else was concerned with her opinions. The vote occurred, resulting in unanimous agreement. Karen was formally banished from the community. Upon the announcement of the judgment, I witnessed an unprecedented occurrence, the entire neighborhood applauding. She was allotted 30 days to sell the house and vacate the premises. It was an extraordinary month, my friend. The neighbors commemorated. Individuals who hardly communicated with one another begun to coalesce, reveling in the downfall of the queen of tyranny. What pertains to me? I relished every moment of it. I deliberately paused in front of her residence daily, greeting her with a grin. Gradually, the for sale sign emerged in front of the house. Subsequently, one day, Karen vanished. She was departed permanently. The neighborhood was liberated, and my mailbox remained unscathed. If you appreciate this video, please comment and subscribe to the channel.